If your dog is eating a grain-free diet, if their diet contains lentils or peas, potato or even sweet potato, then you might have heard of the recent FDA update on the situation with grain-free diets causing heart failure in dogs. So if your dog is eating any of these things, you definitely want to be sticking around for this video. Hi, I'm Dr. Alex from ourpetshealth.com, where my aim is to bring you pet health information designed to help you and your pet live a healthier, happier life. So the first thing to say is that the FDA has been investigating cases that have had an extensive workup either by a veterinarian or a veterinary cardiologist and who have been diagnosed specifically with dilated cardiomyopathy. So that's that type of heart failure that these diets seem to be causing. So it doesn't include a lot of other cases that have been reported which have been suspicious for heart failure but haven't been definitively proved. And that means that the likelihood is that the reports that have been received are really the tip of the iceberg, and actually there are a lot more dogs affected. So the numbers are that the FDA has had 524 reports of heart failure in dogs, which has affected 560 individuals. So this means that there's been several different dogs in the same family that have also been affected. And unfortunately, 119 of these dogs have died of their disease. Most of these dogs were being fed a dry food, so 88% of reports, so that's by far and away the majority of cases were being fed a dry food, but raw food, semi-moist and wet food has also been implicated. So it's not just a kibble alone causing this problem. And then there are a number of different brands that the FDA has named which were involved in more than 10 cases. And these are Acana, Signature, Taste of the Wild, For Health, Earthborn Holistic, Blue Buffalo, Nature's Domain, From, Merrick, California Natural, Natural Balance, Origin, Nature's Variety, Nutrisource, Nutro, and Rachel Ray Nutrish. So the big headline going back was that it was grain-free diets that are causing the problem, but it's clear that that's not the whole picture. So the majority of diets are grain-free, over 90% of them are grain-free, but the big similarity is that a lot of them contain peas, lentils, peas and lentils, or also potato and sweet potato. Now the peas and the lentils are by far and away the most common. Again, that's up at kind of 80 to 90% of diets contain peas and lentils as the majority of their carbohydrate source. So that's instead of the grains, likely to be instead of the grains, given that 90% of the diets were grain free. And about 45% of diets contained either potato or sweet potato as the carbohydrate source. So it doesn't appear to be simply a grain-free problem. It seems to be a problem with diets that are either grain-free and contain peas, lentils and potatoes as the carbohydrate source, or contain those ingredients as the majority of the carbohydrate source in the dog's diet. Now, as for the protein source in the diet, because that's potentially a consideration, that was really widely mixed. There was a massive variation. Now, the most common were chicken, were fish, and were lamb. Whether they're involved, probably not. I suspect that that just represents the most common protein sources that are used in pet foods. And given there was such a variety in the affected diets, again, it doesn't seem like the animal protein source was anything to do with this problem. In a nutritional analysis of these diets, there wasn't any abnormality detected. So taurine is something that has been kind of thought of, and the methionine and the cysteine components of these diets, and those are two amino acids that dogs then use to produce taurine, were found to be above the minimum levels in the vast majority of the diets affected. So taurine doesn't seem to be an issue. But having said that, there is potentially a suggestion that golden retrievers in particular, or certain strains of golden retriever, might be genetically predisposed to developing a taurine deficiency, to have problems synthesizing that taurine. And this is significant because we know that low taurine levels can result in dilated cardiomyopathy, so DCM, which is the type of heart failure that these diets are causing. So what should pet owners do with this information? Well, I think if you're feeding any of these diets, or if you're feeding a diet that's grain-free with peas, lentils, or potato or sweet potato as the majority of the carbohydrate source, then stop feeding these grain-free diets. Switch on to something else. Also, if your dog is showing signs of heart failure, so that's lethargy, coughing, collapse, if you've got any concerns there, heavy breathing, then definitely go and speak to your vet. Certainly if you've been feeding these diets, then that's very important. And then finally, don't panic. There are 77 million dogs in the US. That's the estimated number, and such a tiny fraction is affected. So Don't panic, it's unlikely your dog will be affected, especially if they're not feeding one of these diets. Now, if you are worried and you're thinking of switching onto a raw diet, or you're wondering about the benefits of raw compared to kibble, then check out my other video that's linked here. It's a long video, but it's well worth a watch. It goes through all of the risks and benefits of feeding raw food and feeding a kibble food, a commercially cooked food. But until next time, I'm Dr. Alex. This is Our Pets Health, because they're family.